Thank you, and welcome everyone to the Autonomous Agency Decoupling Growth from Headcount through Agentic AI webinar sponsored by Sense. Today's session, we are going to explore how AI is changing the staffing operating model from simply automating tasks to enabling firms to really scale recruiter productivity to improve candidate engagement and grow without adding proportional headcount. We're going to combine some SAA research with some real-world examples from staffing leaders who are putting these capabilities into practice. Now, just for some quick housekeeping items before we begin, please submit your questions through the webinar using that Slido panel that you can see on the right side of your screen. And today's slides will be available within 48 hours on the SIA webinar page. You will also receive the recording and a link to it as well. So for those of you who may be new to SIA, we are the global advisor on staffing and workforce solutions. We provide research, data, advisory services, events, and education to help organizations make better workforce decisions. And throughout today's presentation, we are going to reference some SAA research. Full access to our research library, our analyst support, and our member benefits is available through SAA corporate membership. Before we begin, I do just want to mention 2 upcoming SAA events. We have Collaboration X, AI in Tech and Staffing and Workforce Solutions, which will be held from September 29th to October 1st in Dallas. And this conference brings together staffing leaders, technology providers, buyers, and investors to explore the future of AI and workforce innovation. And then we have the Healthcare Staffing Summit from November 9th through the 11th in Arlington, Texas. And this is our flagship event, really dedicated to healthcare staffing, featuring the latest market intelligence, technology trends, and executive insights. So we would love to see you at both of those. All right, let's get started. I am going to introduce our speakers. We have a really great lineup today. We have Pankaj Jindal. He is the co-founder of Sense, a conversational AI company and a staffing industry veteran with more than 20 years of experience in staffing technology. His expertise spans AI recruiting, recruiter productivity, talent acquisition, talent redeployment, and candidate experience. Prior to founding Sense, he actually served as CEO of Acria and president of Addison Technologies and Addison Staffing. Next, we have Jenna Matthew. She is vice president of marketing at Trillium Staffing, and she has experience across recruiting, sales, and marketing, and she's recognized as a thought leader in employment branding, recruitment technology, and using AI to enhance the candidate and recruiter experience. Next, we have Andrew Wettingo. He is the director of marketing at OneStaff Medical and founder of Deed & Metal. He has led marketing and creative strategy for organizations including Yahoo and brings extensive experience building brands and driving growth. And last but certainly not least, we have Megan Humphrey, who is senior vice president of operations at Mondo and Addison Group Company. She has more than 14 years of experience specializing in operational excellence, sustainable growth, and AI adoption. She was also recently recognized on SAA's 2026 40 Under 40 list, so congratulations, Megan. And I am SAA Senior Healthcare Staffing Analyst, and I have the pleasure of moderating this webinar. So before I hand it over to Pankaj, I want to just set the stage by looking at how staffing technology has evolved over the last few years. Historically, staffing technology was built around systems of records, right? Front office, middle office, and back office. Over the last decade, firms expanded those platforms with candidate engagement, reporting, mobile experiences, and integrations. Today, AI is becoming the intelligence layer across the entire tech stack, from AI search and match to candidate engagement, voice AI, and AI agents. And as a result, the conversation has really shifted from should we use AI to which recruiting activities should AI perform autonomously and which should remain human. Now, as AI has become embedded across staffing technology, the baseline expectations have changed. So a few years ago, automation and conversational AI were differentiators. Today, they're becoming standard features. And what's emerging now is the next generation of capabilities, voice AI and agentic AI. Voice AI really enables that 24/7 candidate engagement, while agentic AI can execute entire recruiting workflows, not just individual tasks. And the goal here isn't to replace recruiters, it's to free them up from that repetitive work so that they can focus on the relationship building, the candidate quality, and the strategic decision making. Now, the AI really isn't one size fits all, and you can see that by looking at the screen. The priorities actually vary by staffing segment, and the dots on this slide represent the relative importance of each of those capabilities. So you can see in healthcare, credentialing and scheduling are the biggest opportunities because firms are managing those licenses, certifications, the compliance, the expiration dates, that complex scheduling requirements. In IT staffing, the greatest value comes from AI-powered search and match, really using semantic search, the skills inference, candidate ranking, and recruiter co-pilots to be able to identify that specialized talent more quickly. And then in light industrial, there's scheduling and candidate engagement that really rise to the top. And those firms are really coordinating thousands of worker shifts, attendance, call off, redeployment, and it's making automation and conversational AI especially valuable in that high volume environment. So while every staffing segment is adopting AI, highest value use cases really depend on the operational challenges that each sector is trying to solve. Now, one of the biggest challenges facing staffing firms is that growth has traditionally been tied directly to recruiter headcount. So more job orders meant more recruiters, more candidates meant more administrative work, and as volumes increase, response times often slow down, right? AI changes that equation. So instead of simply making recruiters a little more efficient, technologies like voice AI and AI agents can take on much of the repetitive high volume work. The result is that staffing firms can increase recruiter capacity without growing headcount at the same pace. So it's a shift from scaling through people alone to scaling through AI-enabled operations, and that's exactly what today's webinar is about. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Pankaj, who will show you how these concepts are already being put into practice and what they look like in real staffing organizations.
Crystal, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you again for making the time to be here today. I wanted to start by looking at how AI has evolved in our industry. If you think about the very first phase of AI, we had what we call traditional machine learning. Think about basic chatbots. They're relying on manually curated data, and they use what were called BERT models. Now, most of the recruiting tech stack today sits in phase two, which is an LLM transformation. You're all probably very familiar with this, automatically generating resumes, automatically generating screening questions, job descriptions. This has brought us like smarter, adaptable tools with multi-language support and better parsing, better summarization, so on and so forth. The future, however, isn't stopping there. In phase three, you're going to see intelligent orchestration. It's bringing video, voice, conversation, LLM-powered evaluations into the mix. But what we are most excited about here at Sense is, and what we would really love to talk about today is goal-oriented automation agents. What exactly does that mean? Let me give you an example. The future is you are able to actually articulate a goal to your AI system, to your applicant tracking system, to your LLM, however you want to think about it. And maybe the goal is, I want 5 forklift operators to start at this particular Costco in this, area of Chicago next Tuesday. And that's exactly the natural language line that you're going to feed into your system. And it is smart enough to essentially say, okay, I'm looking for forklift operators. Let me narrow down to those people. Let me narrow down to Chicago. Let me narrow down to people who live within a reasonable radius of this particular Costco. Let me narrow down to people who want the amount of money that this job is, capable of offering. Then let me narrow down to people who can start next Wednesday. And these are the 50 people or the 100 people that I have to go talk to. And in a subsequent slide, I will talk about what that looks like. But the AI is going to be able to do this all by itself. This is where they're using what's called large context memory. So it's leveraging all the data within your ATS and every other platform that you might use, either a CRM or a job board, to execute goal-directed workflows. Now, for the longest time, like Crystal said, you guys see my next slide? Crystal, do you guys see the next slide? I feel like I went to the next slide, but I feel like I'm stuck at evolution of automation. I can't hear you. You're on mute, I think.
You are on evolution of automation. Okay. I'm happy to advance if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. I can't seem to go to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, good. Okay, yeah. So For as long as I can remember, and like Crystal said, I used to run staffing companies, before I started Sense. For 15 years that I was running staffing companies, this is the number one dilemma that we dealt with. Do you submit candidates to a job quickly, or do you wait to submit the perfect candidate and deliver a high quality candidate? Obviously you guys understand the pros and cons of that. If you move too fast, it leads to poor placements. You probably don't have the best fit. And if you're focusing on quality, that meant sometimes your best candidates could get lost to competition, or you just become too late and the position goes on hold. And this is where agentic AI is helping. So this is really the reason why we even started Sense in the first place. So if you don't mind, I'll take a second to kind of walk you through the overview of Sense itself, before we get started. So this is Sense in a nutshell. We started a little over 10 years ago with a singular mission to essentially create the best candidate experience that was specifically focused on the staffing industry. We've stayed really true to that mission. We serve over 1,000 customers today, more than half of the largest staffing companies in the US as recognized by SIA. So these are all companies with over $100 million in revenue, and we're responsible for affecting 8 million hires every single year now. Along this journey, we've raised capital from some blue chip investors and also made sure that we are SOC 2 Type 2 certified, which is a rarity for a company our size, but it tells you how seriously we take our customers' data. But anyway, let me introduce the concept of an AI recruiter and how these concepts come to life. Crystal, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So this is what an AI recruiter looks like. And I know this is a bit of a busy slide, but I'll do my best to go from left to right and explain to you what is possible today. This is very much something that is available today, and hundreds of our customers are using this. So this isn't a future looking slide. This is here right now. So let's walk through this. Imagine that a job got created within your applicant tracking system. It could get created because somebody manually keyed it in. It could get created because you have some sort of a feed attached from a VMS and you got a job from a VMS. It could get created because an account manager is meeting with a customer and decides to open a new job, or a recruiter is talking to a candidate and the candidate says, hey, my manager is looking for another guy, another person in my team. A job gets created. As soon as a job gets created, there is an AI agent that is listening for that. And instantly, the AI agent is matching that job against all the candidates in your ATS. Could be 100,000 candidates, could be 1 million candidates, could be 10 million, but you're instantly matching them. At the same time, it's also listening for new people applying to this job, but it's not waiting for them because speed is key here. So if people apply, it can pick it up, but otherwise it's matching those folks. And as soon as it matches them and all the criteria that goes with your particular job, like the one that I was describing here a couple of minutes ago, it will automatically reach out to those people. So let's assume for a minute that you've asked the AI to say, hey, only match the top 100 candidates or top 50 or top 200. That's your choice. The AI will then reach out to those 100 candidates. Let's go with that. As it does that, it is going to respect the communication preferences of the candidate. If in the past the candidate had ever said, please email me, don't text me, they're only going to get an email. Or if they had said, text me, they're only going to get a text. Or if they say nothing, they can potentially get a phone call, because the objective is to make a phone call for everybody and essentially get to a phone call. All right, so that happens. Now let's assume real life plays out. You reach out to 100 people and 60 of them ignore you, never say anything. They don't want to talk to you. They're gainfully employed. And the other 40 people that essentially say, sure, I'll take a call. The AI can then go ahead and call them. What's super important is to make sure that we do this in an omni-channel fashion. So you're not going to just randomly get a call. You can determine if that person you were about to call can get a text message 10 minutes before it, can get an email and say, hey, we're about to call you for this particular role that we think you're a great fit for. And that person then has the liberty to say, oh, wait a minute, I'm in a meeting. I'm at my son's basketball game. Call me back in an hour. Call me tomorrow. Call me Tuesday. So you're essentially making sure that your pickup rates are much higher. When you use omni-channel ways of communicating, our pickup rates are now at about 57%. That means 6 out of 10 people are picking up the phone calls. If you are doing that simply as a voice call, the pickup rates tend to be less than 10%. So this is a very, very significant difference. Okay, now you do the phone call, and I'm assuming a ton of you in the audience have seen hundreds of solutions, which are basically voice AI. Voice AI is pretty evolved. A lot of companies have that. And voice AI is going to do a natural language screening and essentially ask all the questions that you want the AI to ask for that particular job. Oftentimes, you can see it forks over there right here. If the AI is unsure about the fit, it'll send it to the recruiter. If the AI determines that this person is not a fit at all, it'll essentially say that politely and send that person to look at other jobs that you might have available. So you are not trying to screen people out. You're still trying to keep them into the recruiting process. And the ones that they are a fit, those are the people that will be re-ranked. And essentially the AI can determine, here are of the 40 people I talked to, here are the 15 that are a fit. And after talking to them, I'm re-ranking some of them to say, here is person number 1, person number 2, person number 3. And then instantly those people can be submitted to your customers. Now, please keep in mind that you can have a recruiter in the loop anytime you want. You can have a recruiter in the loop at every single step of these processes, where every single thing that's being done by the AI, the recruiter is being informed of. You can also make it more than just informed and say, please don't submit any candidate to a customer automatically. Once we get to that point, you have to stop and just send the candidates to the recruiter so they can do a once over and send it over. So that's entirely up to you. But what is possible is that you can go from a job getting created to people getting submitted while your recruiters could potentially be away from their desk or on a weekend or sleeping or on a holiday, and this will all continue. So that's the most important thing to keep in mind. One other thing I would say is that the success of an AI recruiter really depends on job matching. There are many, many, many solutions out there who will simply do voice screening. That's almost a commodity now. But if you feed a voice AI solution people that are not a great fit, you're going to get people that get selected out of it that are never going to get the job. But if you matched candidates that are an amazing fit, then the AI can do the rest of the process and send the best people over to your customer and put your best foot forward. All right. So next slide. You can do this in a unified experience. Like I said, depending on what the candidate is looking for, you can reach out to them via SMS or WhatsApp if you're doing this outside of the US, or a phone call or a chatbot or a video. But all of this just makes sure that you are meeting your candidates where they live and you're giving them the experience that they want. And what does this lead to? The next slide will show you that this leads to dramatic gains. Here is what a current process today might feel like. Now, I completely recognize that this might be different for different functional industries. So some people might take lesser or more time, but you would generally agree with this idea. You would generally agree on how long a current process might take. And then you can see what an AI recruiter can do on the right-hand side. We have tons and tons of case studies and customers, and hopefully you'll hear from some of them today on how the time to submit and time to hire has been dramatically changed by using an AI-based approach. All right, let's keep going. So AI Recruiter, just by the numbers, this is now a heavily adopted product. I wanted to make sure that people understand this isn't a new offering. 28% of the largest staffing companies in the US, which means companies with over $100 million in revenue, are already using the AI Recruiter. We're matching 37 million plus people, to date, 16 million plus phone calls, plus so on and so forth. You can see that right here. Average time to screen. And this is one of the things I was talking about, average reduction in time to fill. So just imagine that if you could reduce your time to fill by half, what will that do to your efficiency, to your EBITDA, so on and so forth. But anyway, that's essentially the main point that I wanted to make. But what I'm excited about is bringing our experts into the fold. So if you look at the next slide, we've got 3 experts today who are currently using the product. They're in different stages of adoption, but they obviously believe in the promise. And we've got an expert here from light industrial, from IT, tech professional, and healthcare, which tend to be like the three biggest staffing segments if you think about it. And I'd love to get their perspective. And of course, like Crystal said in the beginning, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the Slido bar on the right hand side. So with that, I'll hand this over to Jenna, who is representing Trillium, one of our favorite customers. And Jenna, you can go ahead and please introduce yourself and the company, and I'll switch this back to you.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Jenna Matthew. I am Vice President of Marketing. I've been with the Trillium Staffing brand of companies for 21 years now and oversee what you would think of on the marketing side of things. But I actually started in recruiting and sales with the company. So at the heart of everything that we are doing, we're looking at how do we build that efficiency with our recruiters, and how do we maintain strong recruiters so that we don't face the turnover that is super common in our industry. So over 90 offices across the nation, been in business over 42 years now, and touch a little bit of every space except for healthcare. Go ahead, Crystal. There we go. Perfect. So we actually came into contact with AI Recruiter when we were trying to come up with a solution for high volume hiring on the light industrial side. Facing a lot of the same challenges that many of you guys faced coming out of COVID with high client demands and trying to hire as many people as we could, but making sure that we weren't foregoing that quality piece. And as VMS continues to expand in the industry, we wanted an answer to that as well. So scaling our internal headcount to account for maybe some of our customers that were lower margin business or were in the VMS world didn't quite make sense. So we wanted to work on a role or an augmentation that was going to help us to meet those goals and eliminate some of the churn and burn that we had on our current recruiters. So we brought Grace into the fold about, I would say, just about 12 months ago, and initially started using Grace for that high volume LI hiring and saw dramatic increases in our screened candidates, which I think we have on the next slide here, maybe. Yes, we just saw phenomenal results right away. We 4 times our completed interviews with the same number of staff. Engagement was through the roof. And one of the things that I think stood out the most to our recruiters was we cut their unsuccessful calls in half, meaning the amount of calls that they were calling where it was a wrong number or someone didn't answer or voicemail was not set up, we cut that in half. And that's a huge portion of their day. And it's a huge portion of burnout for them. So that was an immediate thing that we noticed. And it's something that stands out to us still today. So even looking at the holiday weekend, just a couple of weeks ago, we had over 200 candidates that were screened across the holiday weekend. That meant these orders came in right before everyone is about to go on to the long weekend, and no one had to stay after. And I think it's very common in the light industrial space for us to get those 3 p.m., 4 p.m. orders, especially on a Friday. And so to have a solution knowing that we're continuing to get that high volume outreach out to candidates while our staff is still able to disconnect, unplug, and know that those screenings are taking place is a huge asset for us. And looking at that, about 40% of the candidates that are initially screened are not a fit for the position that we originally contacted them for. Now, that could be a pay rate issue, it could be a location, a shift time, but that goes back to what Pankaj said about offering them up other opportunities. And if you look at our statistics, more of our hires from AI Recruiter are what we call secondary hires than a direct hire for the position they were originally screened for. And sometimes that's a matter of serving up to a customer who said, hey, can you send 2 people? And we say, hey, we have 4, and being able to get those additional placements. Sometimes it's being able to say, hey, we have these additional candidates. What other customers might have a need for this skill set? We came across these additional candidates. So that's been huge for us. And I think as it comes to our internal headcount and the impact Grace has had, we're not decreasing recruiters. We're hiring recruiters across the country right now, and that's not going to change. But what it does change is the work-life balance for those recruiters and the efficiency that comes out of them, which obviously translates to more revenue for us, but it translates to higher commission checks for those folks as well, which certainly helps us from a retention standpoint to know that you can leave here at 5 o'clock. The tools that are at your disposal are going to continue to work while you're out. And it really has allowed us to take candidates that are new recruiters, new to the industry, don't have a ton of experience, and get to know the type of roles that they're filling far more in depth. So for instance, if I were to bring somebody in who's never hired on the CNC or in a maintenance tech type position, they may struggle to find the right questions or to dive into the different controls that a machine has or the programs used. The AI recruiter kind of bridges that gap. And as those recruiters are coming in and they're viewing those transcripts, they're getting more familiar with what our customers do every single day, which helps us to scale them up to more skilled positions where maybe they were originally hired for that unskilled light industrial. So for us, it's certainly transformed the ability in which we can recruit, retain, and grow our internal staff, as well as meet our customer needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenna. Really appreciate it. And, I wanted to also add that we have a case study with Trillium that's live on our website. So if you wanted to read this in more detail, and, Jenna's always been very generous with her time. So if there are specific questions or if you are from the same industry and, would love to chat to her, please feel free to reach out to me or anybody at Sense, and we can help you connect with Jenna as well. Jenna, thanks so much. Okay, Megan, on to you. Megan's joining us from Mondo, and which is an IT tech firm, and I'll let you tell her a little bit more about herself, the company, and what they've been doing with Sense.
Awesome. Thank you. And hello, everyone. Really excited to be here. My name is Megan Humphrey, and I'm the SVP of Operations for Mondo and Addison Group Company. Mondo, we are an AI, tech, data, and digital marketing staffing company. We have teams across all markets here in the U.S. as well as international reach. And alongside the rest of the Addison Group portfolio of brands, we are ranked number 33 on the SIA largest staffing firms list. I've personally been with Mondo for 14 years, and my largest focus is creating operational efficiencies across the organization in every aspect. So when it came to Mondo and Addison Group, implementing AI into our recruiting workflow, leveraging the AI recruiter, our number one priority from the beginning was creating operational efficiency and sustainability, championing the buy-in of our AI recruiter, Quinn, top down, and building a proof of concept that was tied to results, leading to increased recruiter production without having to add, volume additional headcount. So transitioning to the next slide and just more of the why we prioritize finding an AI recruiting partner to begin with based on some of our challenges. As previously stated throughout the presentation so far, our number one goal, like many others, was and is to amplify recruiter production without sacrificing the quality and speed. Our mindset and objective is pretty simple, and that is making our existing recruiting engine even greater and even more powerful through AI. So the fastest way to do that is by eliminating, as many of the manual components of the recruiter's day-to-day, such as sourcing and other administrative tasks, so they can focus on the best part of the job, which is the relationship building, digging deep into the parts of the candidate motivators that, AI sometimes can't screen for, and being able to exercise more critical thinking and autonomous decision-making on which candidates are best for the job. Another challenge for us, and I would imagine most staffing companies, is when you are interacting with thousands of candidates every single day and every single week, it can be difficult to provide a high-level candidate experience at scale without compromise. So how did AI and Sense help us solve these pain points? Our AI recruiter's name is Quinn, and we joke that Quinn is one of our best employees and is an amazing teammate because she works 24/7 and she never takes PTO. She works on weekends and holidays. So she's really able to offer the 24/7 support to our recruiters. And Quinn's biggest advantage is her ability to scale outreach and screen hundreds of candidates within seconds, making our go-to-market speed even faster without compromising that quality. So aside from faster screening and eliminating administrative tasks, Quinn is also able to support candidates post-placement while on assignment, helping automate the entire candidate lifecycle end to end. So all of this sounds amazing and wonderful, but I would say, in practice, the operational simplicity of the workflows and being able to sustain AI requires adoption at every level of the organization. So from leadership to your back office operations to your sales team, and of course your recruiting team. Because, rolling out an AI recruiter, we've learned is not, a one and done rollout. The training, the feedback loops, the data, all of it compounds over time and has to be a constant. So hands down, the key to, our success so far and how we've been able to achieve our goal, which is amplifying the recruiting performance, is that Quinn is embedded in how our team works every single day. Quinn is an extension of our recruiters and viewed as a team member, and we track Quinn's stats and success just as we would with any other recruiter on our team. And going into the next slide, highlighting what some of Quinn's performance KPIs and results have looked like so far. We went live with Quinn, I would say mid Q1. So in just 5 months, looking at the quarter over quarter performance, we've seen significant success in our recruiting activity funnel. As you can see here, 11.2% increase in the number of screening calls our recruiters are able to take on a weekly basis, almost a 6% increase in the submittals per recruiter, an 8% increase in the number of placements per recruiter, a 10.7 increase in our overall fulfillment rate, which got Mondo to an 83% fulfillment rate across temp and direct hire placements in Q2, and an 82% year-to-date candidate retention rate on completed assignments. So this is a testament to Quinn supporting us in finding the best and most aligned candidates for the roles long-term. And I think, again, what makes all of these stats even more impressive is, we are in the IT space. So it speaks to Quinn's ability and range to be able to find really high-level niche, very technical placements. So to summarize Mondo's experience and results through AI, AI recruiting has allowed us to be more intentional with adding headcount, amplifying our current team's production, while scaling our speed and candidate experience in the market.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Thanks for sharing that. And, while Megan was talking, it reminded me of something. She talked about these hard to fill IT technical positions. We have a customer that shared something with us that I have used at some of my other speaking engagements. They have a different name for the AI recruiter, and I love how everybody comes up with their own name. But they essentially, the AI recruiter took a position that opened for them and filled it end to end in 11 and a half hours, 11 and a half working hours. So it basically went over 2 days. But what this company then did is it essentially created a little visual of, hey, this is what happened at 8 a.m. The job opened. This is what happened at 9. This is what happened at 10:45, 11:30, blah, blah, blah. And the next day at 11 in the morning, which was 11 hours of elapsed time, this position got filled. It's the first time they've filled this position because these are positions that have opened with them before, but they've never been able to find candidates. It was a tax consultant role, so not something that all of you would identify with, but obviously hard to fill and very high margin. And they made a whole case study out of, this is the amount of money we're going to make out of this over the next, 2 years or what have you. And part of the reason they were doing that was to make sure that there is faster adoption, because even today, there are some people that are skeptical about, hey, is this coming for my job? Is it replacing my role? And I think that's the whole flavor of the conversation today, that what we're hoping AI would do is turbocharge or give every recruiter sort of a assistant, sort of a co-pilot, that, hey, you do my mundane tasks while I go talk to candidates, I don't go talk to customers, I negotiate, I have them talk to each other to make more placements. So if there is one takeaway from the conversation today, I hope that's one of the takeaways that you take, which is this isn't about, how do you replace recruiters? This is about, can you increase your revenue by 20-30% without maybe adding additional headcount? All right, with that, excited to bring Andrew into the mix. Obviously healthcare is a huge vertical within our industry, and also a vertical that has gone through several ups and downs over the last few years since COVID. So, your perspective is going to be really, really helpful. But Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Pankaj. Yeah, so Andrew Wettingale, Senior Director of Marketing with OneStaff. We have been in the space for 16 years, multiple times have been voted SIA's best staffing firms as well as fastest growing. Pankaj kind of touched on this over the last 6 years. A lot of growth up to 2020, and then COVID hit. And the entire industry for healthcare staffing, travel nursing just skyrocketed, and then went back down 3 years later. And so it's been kind of a roller coaster in our industry for sure. I like to look at that as an anomaly that happened within the industry. If you look back to from 2026 to 2020, there's still definitely a lot of growth, taking that kind of bell curve out of it. But there's definitely a lot of hurdles that we're going through in the industry, as well as, within, the VMSs, MSPs involved with everything that we're doing. You're seeing a lot of different changes in margins. So the industry itself has had just multiple challenges, lots of roller coasters going on. But the way that we're looking at AI, and I know it's kind of what everyone is doing within the healthcare staffing industry in general, is if you're wise, it's not there to replace recruiters. Within the industry that we're in, you're never going to be able to place recruiters. I use this analogy every time I do a podcast or a webinar. We talk about, for me, the easiest way to describe healthcare recruiting is it's almost like dating. I mean, it sounds funny. It's a weird analogy, but trust me, when I explain it, it works. These travel nurses, they're going on the road for 13-week assignments. They're going somewhere. They don't have family around. They're looking for a new place to live. They really are. It's not just a job, their next career. It's a short-term thing. They're really leaning on that recruiter to be their kind of Sherpa, if you will, on the journey that they're about to go on. So if you look at it that way, they have to find somebody that they trust and build a relationship with, because they're kind of putting their lives in that person's hands for the next 13 weeks while they're taking care of other people's lives. So there's a lot of trust that needs to be built. So the way that we're looking at AI, and unfortunately our industry is just getting our feet into the water. So I don't have the stats and the success stories that Jenna and Megan have yet. And I trust that we're going to get there because of everything that we have being put in place and the help of Sense. But what we really want to do is help screen the candidates that were coming in. If you look at the numbers, we're getting thousands of placements annually at any given point. And, to get to that number, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of leads that we have coming in, 10,000 plus a month. So looking at the number of leads that a recruiter has to go to actually get to that end point and get a placement, AI can actually help with that. And how would it help with that is that our AI agent, Alex, would actually help pre-screen and get some of this information, again, going back to the dating analogy of find out more about that candidate. What are they looking for? Not just the job and the pay and the shift, hours, location. You're getting that from the job apply itself. But how do we help our recruiter be able to have that conversation, that initial conversation with the clinician, and be able to speak to them and build that relationship right out of the gate? And so that's what we're looking at Alex to do, is get more insights, whether it's about their personal hobbies, things they like to do on their off time, the reasons why they like to travel, and really gather all of that beyond the job info and serve that up to the recruiters on a silver platter, so that they can go and get on that initial call with, all the insight they need to build that relationship. Yeah, so I guess going on to that next slide. So again, the challenges. You're talking to healthcare workers. They are not 8 to 5. So, if they're off shift, their applies could be coming in the middle of the day. They could work nights. We could be getting applies at 3 a.m. at night. So you've heard Jen and Megan both talk about this. As long as you can get that pipeline, continue to keep it moving throughout the day, regardless of what time it is. The best recruiters, they're still on their phones after 5 o'clock and on the weekends. That's just the nature of the game for them. But is it fair? No, they're human too. And we want to make sure that they have that work-life balance. So, to have something in place within AI that's just going to do a lot of that administrative work. And really, I think Jenna spoke to this, and this was a huge stat that I am comfortable that we will as well see. But on any given day, any given week, they could get 100 applies for one job. And to just cut out half of those bad leads so that they can just focus on creating relationships with those good ones, even if it was just half of those, think about the time that gives a recruiter back. And not only that, but then there's focusing their time on just those great quality leads. The recruiters themselves then in turn should start seeing much more success. So it's never about taking anything away from the recruiter. It's truly about elevating what they're able to do on a day-to-day basis. So that's where we're really excited to see what we can do with AI. There's so many other places too within healthcare staffing, when you're talking compliance and again, scheduling, so many ways that you can use AI just to elevate that overall process, that it's kind of the sky's the limit. And there's, the agencies nowadays, I think where I see the industry going in 5 years, it's not about the size of the agency or the size of their database. It's the agencies that are able to be agile and nimble enough to adjust to things like this and implement them as quickly as they can to get ahead. I don't, huge, being in marketing, we're always talking about budgets right now. It's a tough time. We're all trying to figure out where we can save money and be more efficient, get the ROI. Something like AI that just cuts out all that clutter gets you to that endpoint so much quicker. So, yeah.
Awesome. No, Andrew, thank you for sharing. And you brought up a really good point towards the end that I want to double down on. One of the things that is very, very clear with any of the AI products is ROI. You're very able to directly attribute, here is a candidate that the AI talked to, here is a candidate the AI matched the job for, here is how far it took them in the process. We've been in this business for 10 years and we've always had to go back and forth with our customers to explain to them the ROI, because oftentimes people were like, I don't know if Sense completely, helped make this happen. I think our recruiters were talking in the background too, or somebody was sending them a text message and maybe you didn't know about this. That's no longer the case. Here it is very, very clear. This job opened, the AI matched them, the AI took this forward. And whether or not you have a recruiter in the loop, eventually Sense or the AI recruiter influenced this placement and it went to an actual placement. So now customers are very much, sort of self-enabled to see, all right, and Jenna mentioned this in one of her slides. In these 30 days, these are the number of placements that we made that were clearly attributed to AI. And then you can do your own math on how long your length of assignment is, what's your average margin per hour, and how much margin are you generating versus how much money are you spending? And is that a 10x ROI or a 50x ROI? And hopefully for executives and CEOs, that makes it an easy decision. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Andrew.
Yep.
Back to you, Crystal.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are going to just open it up to the panelists for a couple of questions, and then I'll move into audience Q&A, although I think I'm going to tie in a couple because they might align well with these questions that we have. But we're moving past AI as just a software tool. It's becoming a functional autonomous team member. So what does the day-to-day look like for your human recruiters when an AI agent is successfully handling the heavy lifting of sourcing and screening And I'll piggyback on that with an audience question about quantifying how this is helping with burnout and employee well-being. I think that might tie in nicely there. So Jenna, do you want to kick us off and maybe?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So for our team, I think a lot of times when you come into the office, you've got so many, as Andrew had said, you have all these applies, you have all of these things. And I think prioritizing where to start their day is always the key. And so for our team, we come in and we have an entire list of all of the candidates that AI Recruiter has screened for us that they have identified as a fit. And that is where we start our day every day. And everything else is kind of noise because every person that applies to those jobs that my team's assigned to are going through this process, right? And as we've continued to expand that across different divisions within the organization, it's the same thing. You come in and you spend your time on high priority items, which are getting qualified candidates in front of your customers, starting to build that relationship, have those conversations, sell them on the opportunity, and make that handoff to the customer. So that's where we're starting our day with that for sure.
Megan, Andrew, anything to add? I have some other questions for you if not.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I think.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Megan. You're fine.
I was going to say, I know Andrew touched on this too, as well as Jenna, but really with the AI recruiters, especially for us in IT, like we really rely on our AI recruiter Quinn to handle like the technical screening. So that way, the team, they're able to have more, candidate connects throughout the day. They're able to like dive deeper in screening with the candidates on, things that AI always can't screen for, which is like, the soft skills, like, the candidate's communication, like what their true motivators are that aligns, with the opportunity. So I think it just, they're able to really just dive deeper into, what they all want to do, which is like having, more candidate conversations and building those relationships, focus on, how they're going to get their deals across the finish line versus so much, on the front end lift of recruiting, which is like the sourcing and items like that.
Yeah, I think the only quick thing that I would add to that is just, in my ideal world, and I may get in trouble for saying this, is that I see our recruiters not the KPI, the old KPI in our industry of having 100 calls a day. I would like to see that not be a KPI, have the recruiters worry about doing 50 calls a day and making those calls based fully focused on that relationship, not all of the administrative tasks. Take all of that off their plates. They're not asking the questions that Alex, the virtual agent, can ask. They are truly just focused on that relationship building part of it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, based on that time, I'm going to have to just pick and choose which one we answer here so we can get to audience Q&A. But let's move on to this one. The data shows a massive revenue gap growing between firms that fully adopt AI and those that don't. So for the leaders out there hesitating, what was the aha moment for your team that made them trust AI, and how has it actually impacted your bottom line? I think, Andrew, your journey is a little bit more at the beginning stages. I don't know if Jenna or Megan, you guys want to take this one?
Yeah, I can take it. I know I mentioned this in my section, but really it was so important to us when we, first rolled out Quinn, our AI recruiter, to our recruiting org was, again, really championing that she is an extension of them. She's not replacing them. She is a teammate here at Mondo, and the whole goal is to amplify their production. They all want to make money. This is, a runway to do that, increase their commissions, increase the amount of, placements they're making. So I think, it was all about the mindset of how we viewed this from day one. And then we, on a weekly basis are championing the recruiters that have Quinn influence placements, so really incentivizing the behavior of who's leveraging Quinn versus, those that maybe aren't adopting it as fastly. But that's really helped us see the quick results in such a short amount of time, is, like I said, really just positioning Quinn as an extension of the recruiter, not replacing them.
Agreed. And I think from a leadership perspective, the ROI is, as Pankaj mentioned, super easy to measure. And as we look at how our KPIs are in the staffing industry, none of us start with the fill rate, right? We're looking for those breadcrumbs that kind of lead up to that. So I would say if you're new to this, I would certainly encourage you to measure those small things going into it, right? Decrease in unsuccessful calls. What is our completed interview and submittal ratios? How have those been impacted? And then as you're further along into that journey, you get 2 weeks in, 4 weeks in, you'll start to see that revenue derived from it as well. So don't be scared to kind of measure some of those things earlier on in the hiring process.
Good, thank you. All right, I think this might have to be the last one, and Pankaj, feel free to jump in here if there's something you want to add. But in staffing, speed is oxygen, but placing the wrong person damages your firm's reputation and relationships. So how are you balancing the pressure to submit candidates in record time with the need to accurately predict their long-term success on the job? It's a good one, so anyone can take it.
I think honestly, this has taken a lot of the pressure out of it, right? Because you have a tool that's working in the background 24/7, and it really does increase the amount of time and energy your team can put into, just like Megan said, challenging those soft skills, trying to figure out what some of those are with those candidates, coaching them pre-interview, really making sure they understand the job that they're being submitted for and going to work on. And having those deeper dive conversations where if you're sitting here having to make 4 times as many phone calls in a day, those things aren't translating as well to those candidates. And I think the more a candidate knows and understands going into an opportunity, the higher likelihood they are to find the right match and stay.
Yeah, good.
Andrew, were you going to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I also think within healthcare staffing, obviously, these clinicians, when they're applying to jobs, they're typically applying to 5 other agencies at any given point. So using that virtual agent to immediately get a hold of them, speed to contact is, you talk to any agencies, I get on the industry calls all the time. Speed to contact right now is literally what everyone's doubling down on. The virtual agent allows that regardless of the time of day. But again, also getting those insights beyond what the job is and where it is and what the pay is. Recruiters are being armed with more insights than just that, because a lot of times it may not, maybe they were applying in San Diego, but maybe Los Angeles, even though the pay rate's not the same, there's another reason, or the recruiter can speak to that facility in that location and gives them the right fit. They're selling the job on what's right for that candidate. And so that helps kind of navigate, like, oh, I applied to that job because the pay rate was great, but I'm going to be miserable there. And in the end, the end outcome's never good for that. So again, it's like dating. It's you may think you want that, but maybe deep down, this is the perfect fit for you for the long term. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is what I literally started this conversation with, that hopefully you no longer have to choose between submitting fast and submitting a high quality candidate, because somebody is essentially raising the bar, AI, on that automatically for you in the background. And a couple things that Andrew mentioned, I've used these stats before. 56% of the people apply to the job after hours. And when people do apply for a job, they tend to apply to 10 to 12 companies at the same time. So the first company that reaches out to them is the company that they're most likely going to stick with. And if you don't have a mechanism to reach out to candidates after hours, and it's only going to happen the next day, you may just have lost your best candidates because somebody else was able to get them into the mousetrap and say, here we are, let's do a voice screening, let's do a chatbot-based screening. Or at the very least, we're interested in talking to you. Let's set you up with a recruiter. So they already have their mind share associated with another company. So yeah, thanks for sharing that.
All right, I'm going to skip that one just for the sake of time. Some quick takeaways. There's a lot of good information here. So before we jump into audience Q&A, AI is evolving, right, from automation to autonomous execution. The future of growth is scaling recruiter productivity, not recruiter headcount. Agentic AI can accelerate hiring while preserving recruiter oversight where it matters most. The greatest impact comes from embedding AI across the entire recruiting workflow, not isolated tasks. And organizations that adopt AI strategically today will be better positioned to compete on speed, quality, and candidate experience. All right, we do have a couple questions. We have a few questions. I'm not sure that we will get to them all today. If we don't, we will answer your questions following the webinar within the next 48 hours. Does Sense do behavioral type interviewing, which is required for higher level roles? For example, share a challenge with your supervisor you faced recently on your job and how you addressed it, and then be able to evaluate the answer, not just provide a transcript to the human recruiter.
Yes, I'll take that. We absolutely can. There are many, many examples of us doing that, where we can also give you a qualitative summary on where you would either place that answer by itself or compare that against 10 different answers. By the way, in the same token, there are several jobs that require us to evaluate if the person had, presence of mind, if the person had great, diction and enunciation skills, if the person had a great use of English grammar and knowledge and punctuation. Sometimes you're doing it for really low-paying jobs like a call center, but please know that those capabilities absolutely exist.
And then this one actually might be for you too, Pankaj. Initially, you had said, you had talked about your answer rate being so high. Why is your answer rate so much higher than if a human made a phone call? Is it because you first text them to see if available?
Yeah, part of it is absolutely that. And I've said this for many, many years. When the other party feels like they are making the choice, they show up. Oftentimes our experience has been that the recruiter says, I can talk to you at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. And then the candidate is forced to say, okay, I'll talk to you at 3 p.m. They didn't quite really meant it because they might have two other things going on and they have to reschedule at the last minute. But imagine sending somebody a scheduling link and saying, pick a time that works for you. And when you pick a time, you're actually way more likely to show up because, now you better have a genuine excuse. Otherwise, this is really your choice. But at the same time, this whole idea of an omni-channel outreach, this idea that you can give people a heads up 10 minutes before you're calling them saying, hey, about to call you in 10 minutes, and you just seem to be running behind in the middle of something, probably weren't going to be able to pick up the phone call at the exact 10 minutes and might even be able to do that 3 minutes later. You're at least able to say, give me 5 more minutes. And that just changes the difference between somebody picking up versus not. There is lots of data here on how voice AI is typically able to talk to about 10% of the people, especially companies that only provide voice AI solutions versus an omni-channel approach.
And I want to try to squeeze this one in. Where is the AI recruiter sourcing candidates from outside of the ATS? LinkedIn Recruiter?
Not at the moment. That is absolutely something that we can talk about and we can do. But right now, the biggest idea is to make sure that we are using the candidates that you've already paid money for and millions of dollars for over the last 10, 20 years of your life. I got to tell you, those are the people that are being completely underused. I can't tell you how many companies come back to us and analyze their own database to say that the 50% of the placements that they made last year were all made from people who were already sitting in their database. So that's our first line of attack. If we were to source from other organizations, that's a whole different cost. That's a whole different structure that a lot of people have already paid for. But we can certainly have a conversation if that's your use case because it's an easy connector. But the idea isn't to go find that person from all 150 million people in the US that are available to work. The idea is to use your database as the primary source that we start with.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're going to wrap, but I just want to say a huge thank you to Sense for sponsoring this webinar. Huge thank you to our panelists for being here. And I also want to point you towards some SIA research that was mentioned in this webinar that was related to this topic. These reports are available only to SIA members. If that's something that you're interested in becoming a part of, please reach out to Member Services, and we are happy to help you with that. And then thank you all so very much for taking time out of your day to join this webinar. As a reminder, a copy of the slides and a link to the recording will be distributed to all attendees within 48 hours following this webinar. If we did not answer your questions, we will be sure to get back to them within the next 48 hours. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.